Welcome to The Path is Always Evolving, a podcast for healing humans and curious souls. Hosted by energy healer Tenya Eichenberg and mind body specialist Eva Zobian-Wolf, this show blends science and spirit to explore real life healing, self care, and personal transformation. No fluff, no fixing, just grounded conversations that meet you where you are. Because healing isn't linear, but the path, it's always evolving.
Welcome to The Path is Always Evolving.
You had a little
brain fart.
there, didn't you?
I
Which
did.
which podcast am I on?
Right. Which one am I talking on today? I'm Tenya Eichenberg. I'm an energy healer and a self-care coach. And my co-host.
Hi, I'm Eva Zobian-Wolf. I'm a nurse and a yoga therapist.
Yes, and I am her
Also an energy
co-host.
worker.
She is an amazing one as well. And we are co-hosting The Path is Always Evolving. This is a new venture for us. We've done a few of these episodes together on my podcast, but we decided that it was time to just go ahead and start a channel for the two of us for this podcast. We came up with a name, we came up with a logo. And so we're very excited to be able to share our knowledge.
And this is just evolving. One of the ways that I am looking at it as this is a new creation. It's a new kid. It's a new baby that we have, and looking to see how it grows and how it evolves and what sticks and what is needing to be tweaked and encouraged,
Yeah,
nourished,
yeah.
guided.
Very, very excited. I'm just setting the timer because we want to try to keep the episodes somewhat short, around a half an hour, if not less. And so I just want to make sure that we're keeping time because we value our listeners' times. And of course, I mean, this is not all we do. We both do have other businesses that we have to attend to um, on a daily basis. And so we just want to make sure that we're mindful of everybody's time and try to give as much information as we can to help the listeners when they're joining us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, what's one of the practices of yoga is ahimsa, non-stealing. Actually, that's do no harm. Another one is non-stealing. And of course, now I can't remember the name of it because my mental brain fart just happened. But yeah, how do we use this in our daily life? That's one of the big aspects of it is how do we take this information that we're sharing with our clients and how are we implementing it in our own personal lives? Because this week weekend I was teaching a training, and one of the things that I said, that is not mine, this is not my words, but something I shared with my students. You are your first and most important client, or if you're a nurse, you are your first and most important patient. And when I say that, that can be very triggering for some people.
It can. I have I can't remember where I heard it. I'm sure it was on a reel or a TikTok or somewhere. But someone said that the day you were born, you are your first job. You are your first job. You are the first person that you need to make sure is taken care of. And now, of course, this is not in a selfish way. This is not putting your needs above others. This is making time to support your needs. There is a difference. And that is why self-care is not selfish, is because you're not doing it in a way that is detrimental to another person or another being. Because I mean, you could do it to an animal, you could do the same thing to an animal as you do a person. So being doing self-care and putting yourself first is not selfish.
Absolutely. And there's a way to differentiate that because um, one of the one of the ways that my mentor has always referred to this is, we have this saying, you shouldn't pour from an empty cup. Well, what she will say is, you shouldn't be ever pouring from even a slightly empty cup. Your cup should always be full, and what is overflowing is what you have to give to everybody else.
Right.
Because if I'm only at 30%, my cup is only 30% full, and I'm taking care of my kids, I'm taking care of my family, I'm taking care of my patients, I'm taking care of my clients. Everything that I give out is coming from that 30%. But that
Mm-hmm.
also means that I'm only really at 30% capacity, meaning that my efforts are only 30% of what they could be because
Right.
I'm not fully taken care of. I'm not fully restored. I'm not fully nourished, fully rested.
Right. So this, I think this can take us into what we can talk about in this episode is guilt on not being perfect.
Mm,
I
yes,
think what we've been talking about is a good lead in to that
absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
because when we are pulling from that cup, from that depleted cup, and we realize that we've depleted it from 30 to 15%, how much guilt, and I'm asking the listeners this, so drop your comments down into the box below. But how much guilt are you feeling when you go, ugh, I need to refill my cup? And of course, those are not the words you're saying. You're saying, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm fried. I'm burnt out. I'm overwhelmed. Thank God it's Friday.
And what's the emotion that that brings up when somebody you're tired and you're exhausted and the only thing that you want to do is either climb into bed or sit on your couch, go to a yoga class, whatever it is, you want to do something that is going to fill you back up. And somebody says, "Can you bake this for this particular event? Can you show up here? Can you do this? Can you drop this off? Can you work an extra shift?" And immediately that guilt comes up because your first thought is, hell no, I don't want to do that.
Right.
But I feel
Obligated.
guilty. I feel
Guilty.
obligated. I feel ashamed that
Yeah.
my first thought is not, let me take care of you. And then we get resentful.
Yeah.
And this is why self-care is incredibly important, is because if we're not taking care of our reserves, that reciprocal emotion that happens that
Mm-hmm.
isn't kindness, that isn't compassion,
Right.
comes in.
Right. I would love to know at what point in history and who was the first, and I hate to say it, but it was a man.
Of course it was.
It was a
Duh.
man who made his wife feel guilty for needing or wanting to take some time for herself. And then she passed that on to every daughter, every niece, every cousin, friend's daughter. It all filters down that
Absolutely.
that we're not that we're not allowed to take care of ourselves before taking care. I mean, I can remember growing up, and I'm not sure if it was told to me or if it was something I heard or something. I had to have been maybe a combination of all of the senses, hear, see, sights. I maybe even smelt it. I don't know. But it was always, you have to make sure that everybody else is taken care of before you take care of yourself. right? I would see my mom running around making sure that, and maybe this is because she was a stay-at-home mom. And so that was her job. Her job was the house. Part of my job working from home and having my business is also taking care of the house. That is an agreement that my husband and I do have, but he's so supportive that I also have that ability to say, you know what, I can you switch laundry? I need to go and I'm going to go and take a bath, or I'm going to go take a shower, or something like that. But like, at what point did women start to believe that they weren't allowed to take care of themselves first?
That goes back thousands of years
Oh yeah.
because women, even in so many different roles, women weren't viewed as a partner. Women weren't viewed as an equal contributor to a household.
Right.
And except for the few matriarchal societies, which there's very, very few,
Mm-hmm.
there is this idea that women are less than, that they're here to serve.
Yeah, so it was more of an energetic imprint,
Absolutely.
because the way, because explaining it in that way, like, all of a sudden I have this sense of that no one really ever said, no, you can't go take care of yourself. What they
No.
just kept saying was, bring me my boots, bring me my dinner, make me a sandwich, Linda.
And and it's so pervasive because the I remember as a kid, you know, similar, my mom would cook these huge meals, and then she would be the last person to sit down.
Hmm.
Um, when we would be in different areas and we would see an older lady or an older man walking up to a doorway, my mom would push me and go up and open the door for them. So all of those times where it was this constant, go do this, go take care of them, go lift that, go carry that, go. And those are fantastic things to do. And I'm not saying that she shouldn't have done them, but it could have been, hey, would you like to go open the door for them? Right?
Right.
Where it becomes my choice to be
Right.
kind to somebody rather than something that is repeated to me over and over and over.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
there's so many times where um and then, this comes down in a lot of different ways because I mean, I grew up in a house with me, my sister, my mom, and my dad. And there were certain things that my dad said, I'm not doing that. That's women's work.
Mm.
You can't do that. Girls don't do those things. I grew up in the 70s, and I grew up in the 70s with European immigrant parents.
Right.
So not only did it have this 70s mentality, but there was also a very old world mentality of
Yeah,
what
that
were
was
this.
totally different than mine. Like, I don't remember my dad ever saying those things, but I can remember seeing those things. Like, I remember that my mom was, because she was a stay-at-home mom, and even when she did have a job and she worked overnights at a truck stop, I can still remember she did the stay-at-home mom stuff. She did the laundry, she did the cooking. Um, I don't know. I'm sure my dad cooked. I just don't remember him cooking.
My
You
dad had very few meals that he would cook,
know.
and it
Hmm.
was usually scrambled eggs, or he would make something similar to latkes. They just called them potato
Yeah.
pancakes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
but it was very specific meals that were his domain, he would make, and it was very rare.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you break that pattern of feeling guilty for not being perfect in your self-care or in your daily life? How did you break that? How did you break that generational curse?
Honestly, for me, it was yoga, and it is an ever evolving process. So the the framework of yogic philosophy is there's 8 limbs. The very first 2 limbs are called the yamas and the niyamas, and they deal specifically with ethical and moral guidelines, how I interact with others, do no harm, non-stealing, non-attachment, and then the niyamas, how I interact with myself, having self-discipline, self-study, seeking seeking alignment with my authentic self, my divine self, however you want to refer to it. And it was in reading about that and actively focusing in on incorporating that into my life where, as I'm reading the book that I have that lists all of them, I have notes marked all over it where it says, you do this. This
Mm-hmm.
is something for you to work on. Because as soon as I read it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, yes, exactly. The idea that if you show up 10 minutes late all the time,
Yeah.
you're stealing time
Yeah.
from the people that you're meeting with. If I teach a yoga class and I extend the class by 10 minutes, I just stole 10 minutes of my students' time. I think I'm giving them a gift, but what I'm actually doing is stealing their time and saying, you don't know how to manage your time, so I'm going to manage it for you.
Mm-hmm. Have the book,
I have the
right?
book, and
So what is it
so
called?
it's called The Yamas and the Niyamas by Deborah Adele. Uh,
Okay.
and it's utilized a lot in different yoga teacher trainings. It really helps, and this is the thing that a lot of people don't understand about yoga is, yes, we have the practices that happen on the mat where we're applying these principles. So the idea of do no harm. So I'm not trying to bend my body into a position that isn't meant for me. But the areas that really spoke to me were things like non-attachment.
Mm-hmm.
Let whatever's happening happen, let it unfold. If it's not in your control, and this is very stoic as well too, if it's not in your control, then just let whatever happens happens.
Mm-hmm.
But those concepts of non-stealing and non-excess, right? So you're becoming aware of, man, why do I need 50 coffee cups?
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. It's little things, and it really stretches out over the course of other things. But bringing it back to obligation, when you start to really hear who you are, right? And so this is part of the process of a yoga practice is unpacking, like removing a certain layer of the crap that has been shoved onto us over the course of our life. And
Right.
you think, okay, an example that I use is I went for a haircut when I was a kid, and the lady looked at me and goes, you really need bangs. You have a large forehead. You really should have bangs to cover that forehead up. And all I kept thinking was, I, what I need bangs. I'm not supposed to let people see my forehead. Like there's something
Yeah.
wrong with me, right? So it's these little things that people say that stick in your mind, and you go to get a haircut and you're like, oh, I really want to do this haircut. Oh, but I have this
Right.
flaw. So I shouldn't do this because I just want to make sure that I don't highlight my flaw. When you're an amazing freaking human being.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to point out to the listeners that we took a pause for a minute so I could yawn because I had this big yawn that was just. But when energy's clearing, when energy's releasing, when we talk about things and energy clears, I yawn. So it's not that I'm tired. It's not that I'm bored with what Eva's saying. It's just there is something clearing either for her, for me, for whoever's watching. There's just, see, there it goes again. There's just stuff clearing. So
And see, luckily for her, it's a really difficult task to get me to shut up. So while she's yawning, I can talk and
that's right.
make sure that we don't have dead air.
That's right. I just need to remember to hit mute so that in case there's a loud at the end, I'm not interrupting. But
Hey, you know what? That's also a signal for other people. You know, we have these mirror neurons, and part of our understanding of ourselves is recognizing that when somebody is getting anxious or keyed up, we can keep ourselves calm by using our resources, and our mirror neurons don't have to dictate what we do. So, you know, if you start yawning, I don't have to start yawning because I'm continuing to let my energy flow.
yeah,
But yes, and that's such a great distinction. And the fact that you shared that, you felt completely open and honest and vulnerable to share that with everybody is a huge indication of growth, right? Because a lot of times as kids, teenagers, adults, we're told, don't, and we're nailing on some
we
things
are.
today, because we're told don't do these things. People
Yeah.
don't need to know this. And one of the things that we're finding out in this day and age is there's a lot of conversations that have been happening in closed rooms that should have been happening out loud and in
Mhm.
group settings, you know, talking about menopause, talking about the idea that we are not obligated to be a specific way in order
Right.
to make somebody else happy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. And one of my um we talk about, the guilt around not being perfect, around doing the self-care, and the fact that we think we have to be perfect in order for life to continue, for people to like us, for us to do things. There's this perfect um image that we cultivate. And I I like the word perfect. I don't love it yet, but I like the word perfect, and I'll tell you why. For me, perfect is just how we are. We are perfect in every single way. We are perfect just the way we are. When we say things like, um, let's say you made a joke about someone and they didn't find it funny, and you're like, well, I'm sorry, but I'm not perfect. And it's like, well, you are, because the only people who see faults in us are ourselves. It doesn't matter what faults other people see in us, because why do they get to dictate what our faults are?
And are they actually seeing a fault in us, or are they seeing a fault of
And
themselves that is
right,
being mirrored through us?
right. Yeah. So in my brain, in my world, everybody's perfect. And perfection changes every day.
Yes, and that is such an incredible distinction, is that again, the path is always evolving. You are always evolving, and what makes you perfect, what makes you you, changes from moment to moment, day to day, week to week.
Right.
And this is an area where I think we get so caught up where we feel guilty because we think, oh, I don't weigh 115 pounds. I don't fit into a size zero. I'm not tall. I'm not short. I'm not quiet. I'm not loud. I'm not introverted. I'm not extroverted. because we keep thinking, I need to be like that person. I need
Yeah.
to be more like this person.
Right.
Instead of stepping into who we are, and this is where, when you do the energy work, when you do the self care, um, when you practice mindfulness, that guilt starts to lessen. And this was huge for me because I always had guilt. I wasn't taking care of this person enough. I'm not signing up for enough extra shifts at work. I'm not spending enough time with the kids. I'm not spending enough time with my husband. I'm not doing the yard work. I'm not exercising enough. I'm not baking for the neighbors. Like random things that come into your mind that you're just like, oh, I should be doing this. I'm not girly. I'm not creative. I'm not artsy. Instead of, and then that's the thing, is we spend all this time worrying about I'm not this, instead of being happy and content with who we are in the moment and being really happy that we've come as far as we have.
Hmm.
Um, and that guilt is suffering. The guilt is suffering, and one of the aspects that I work with my clients is how do we reduce suffering, and it can be pain, it can be range of motion, it can be illness, but a lot of what we do in our personal self, our personal relationship with ourself, how we speak to ourselves, that's a big part of our suffering.
Yeah, it is. It is. So how do we step back and stop making ourselves feel guilty for taking care of ourselves?
It is a daily practice. There's something that I say to myself on repeat. And I say this to my clients and my students. I say this on repeat in all kinds of spaces, with kindness, compassion, and non judgment.
Hmm.
Are you treating yourself with kindness, compassion, and non judgment? Are you extending kindness, compassion, and non judgment?
Hmm.
You know, one of the examples that I use a lot is, I call it the Texas exit because it never fails. You're driving on the highways here in San Antonio, and somebody will be in the far left lane and decide at the very last second, I'm going to exit right now. And they just zoom across
Yep.
5 lanes of traffic, and exit. I always joke that the sand barrels that are at
Hmm.
the exits, they should have a "I'm this many days old" sign on them so that people become aware of just how often those barrels get decimated.
Wow. Wow.
And so, your reaction when that person cuts you off is a symptom and is a signal of the state of your nervous system, right? So if that person cuts you off and you sit there and you think, he must have had something really important that he needed to be where somewhere he needed to be, or he must have been really distracted, or whatever it was, like, man, been there, done that, right?
Hmm. Yep.
And let it go.
Yeah.
Or we can be like, oh, somebody thinks they're really important today, right? It's some variation, between the
Yeah.
two. Or they exit and we're screaming and yelling and sending them, signals and screaming at them, which does absolutely nothing.
No.
And
No.
even worse, we get to where we're going and somebody says, hey, how are you doing today? Oh, well, amazingly alive, considering what almost happened to me, and then continuing to talk on that.
Yeah.
That's a state of our nervous system.
Hmm.
And when we calm our nervous system, we have that kindness and compassion for others, but we also have that more so. We have that kindness and compassion for ourselves. so that when we make mistakes, so one of the things that I do actually is I've stopped using the word mistake, or tried not to use the word mistake, because instead, one of the ladies that was in one of my 300-hour yoga teacher training, she had this saying, look for the lesson in the blessing. And I was like, oh, that actually, you can do that forwards and backwards.
Yeah.
And if you're always looking for, okay, did this move me forward, or did this stop me, or did it
Right.
send me backwards,
Yeah.
then it's not a mistake. And so when we focus in on, okay, I'm going to make a decision, I mean, this is the literal fuck around and find out.
Right.
I'm going to do something and let's see, does this move me forward or does this send me back? And if it
Right.
sends me back, maybe it sent me back for a reason,
Right.
so that I would see a different version, a different path, right? Edison created how many versions of the light bulb before he actually created the
Thousands.
working light bulb?
Yeah, I think it was thousands. Yeah.
And so when we look at what we do, that procrastination paralysis that we get because we're so afraid of making the wrong decision, if
Hmm.
we aren't so focused on, I have to be perfect, I have to make the one right decision,
Right. Right. Yep.
life evolves through that way.
Yeah.
What about
Yeah.
you? What do you use to help you with that?
So one of the things I always use is what I used early on in my healing practice, because I didn't start doing self-care until after I got into energy work. I didn't really understand the term self-care and what it meant. And I really did live a life of guilt I would when I would do things when my husband was home. Not, I wouldn't, I would be fine like taking the kids to the gym and putting them in the gym daycare while I went and worked out for an hour. But when my husband came home, I felt guilty if I took any time away from him.
Did he
And
ever say anything
no,
to okay, the
no,
important
no,
distinction.
that was because it is what I saw my mom doing. I saw other military wives doing, because that was kind of just the role that they played they played into. But one thing that I told myself early on, I tell my clients that you're worth spending your time on. And if you really cannot, like, I still value the time I have with my husband in the evenings. Now, because we're in this empty nest stage, it's a little bit different. Um, and I still try not to do a whole lot of things in the evenings. I stop work at like 4 o'clock because I want my evenings to be with him. And it's just how I am. It's where I love to be. I love to be
Mm.
with him. What?
I was gonna say that there's some wording in there that we're gonna talk about in another episode.
Okay. I hate it when you call me out like that.
I do it with love.
I know you do. I know you do. Um, but I lost my train of thought.
Spending the evening with your husband, how it's
Yes, I,
important to
I
you.
love spending the evenings with my husband, because we are gone, because we are, it's our time, and it always has been our time, because we always wanted to foster our relationship, because when the kids left, we knew it was just going to be the two of us. But as healing has progressed, I'm okay with taking an hour or two or three, whatever it is I want to do during the week. If it's in the evenings, I'm okay doing that. I don't feel guilty for doing it, because I'm worth spending my time on. So, but if you also can't find the time, I will tell you, we will find you the time. If you don't have time for self-care, we'll find the time. But this may also mean that you have to get up a little bit earlier than your kids and get part of your self-care done before they wake up.
And self-care doesn't have to be an hour or
No,
2 hours. I mean, it
no,
can literally be waking up 10 minutes earlier
yeah, yeah.
to sit outside with a cup of coffee or sit and meditate for a moment
Hmm.
or read some type of inspirational book, something that is meaningful to you,
Yeah,
and finding
absolutely.
those little pockets of time.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, we're coming over getting into like 40 or 40 minutes here on the episodes. We want to again be mindful of everybody's time and not take their time from them. We're spending your time on, and how are you framing your words? What is your energy? What are your words saying about what you're calling in or what you're pushing away? Yeah. So don't feel guilty for being perfect,
You're
because
an
we are
amazing
all
person.
perfect. Yeah, we're all perfect in our own ways, and there should not be any guilt around being you.
Yes, absolutely. There's only one you in the world. Be the best you that you can be.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week.
Take care.